Hi, my name is Kerry. I'm from Fancy Cakes by Linda, and today I'm going to show you how to apply ganache to your sponge cake with the acrylic boards using the upside down method. When I first started to ganache cakes, I used the silver foil boards, the double thick cards that we place underneath our sponge cakes when we're going to stack our cake. And this was great, they're readily available, they're cheap and cheerful, but what I found was that when I used my side scraper, I sometimes used to peel off some of the foil, and that could end up in the ganache, and even worse, be left in the ganache that's on your cake for one of your customers to eat. So I thought there must be an easier way of doing this, which is where I then had the ganache boards made, and that's what I'm going to show you how to use today. So what you will need is a spirit level, a very thin palette knife, a straight edge. This is just to make sure that your cake is nicely lined up. A side scraper. This is a Fat Girl's side scraper, and I got this from Claire's Cakery Supplies, and I will put the link in the description of this video. Two acrylic boards, one for the top, one for the bottom. These are slightly larger. All of them are made slightly larger than the actual sponge cake itself, because then you have a nice rim around the edge for the ganache to sit in, so you have nice straight side edges. You need some ganache. You also need a palette knife to apply your ganache to the sponge cake. I put mine on a turntable today. You don't need to do that. You can put it straight onto the worktop. It's entirely up to you what you feel more comfortable working with. So the first thing we do is we have a ganache board on the bottom, and then we have one on the top. And the first thing we need to make sure is that your sponge cake is completely level, otherwise you'll end up with a wonky cake. So you just make sure it's level. And once it's nice and level, you can then start to apply your ganache. I have the ganache board on the bottom. I can see that there's a nice small rim around the edge. You don't need them too large, otherwise you're just going to use a lot more ingredients. So how I start mine is I start with one board to begin with. Your ganache needs to be like a peanut butter consistency. If you'd like to know how to make the ganache, I can pop a link in the description for you to follow. So the first thing I do is I start to apply a thin layer of ganache all the way around your cake. Then what I do is I apply a layer of ganache on top, just a thin coat. This is almost like the foundation, the base of your ganache on your sponge cake. It always looks a bit messy to begin with. Now I want that layer to dry, so what I'm going to do, you can pop it in the chiller for a little while. It can take about half an hour to an hour to give that a nice dry edge, but what I tend to do is I just pop it in the freezer for 5 minutes, 10 minutes at max, and once it's nice and dry I'll bring it out and I'll apply the next layer. I've taken my cake out of the freezer or fridge, wherever you've decided to put it, and the top of it's nice and sort of firm now. You can touch it without getting sticky hands. What you need to do now is put your second acrylic ganache board on top and make sure your cake is level again. That's nice and level. The second thing you need to do is take a set square and you line it up to make sure your bottom board is in line with your top, because if it's over here you'll end up with a wonky cake. So you line it up all the way round. If you notice, I put my ganache board straight on top of my cake because the chocolate is nice and cold and it won't stick. Some people like to put a piece of greaseproof paper or splash the top with water, but that's entirely up to you. I don't need to do that, I just pop it straight on and I'm confident that the board is going to come off at the end. So now what we're going to do is we're going to apply our second layer of ganache. Keep going all the way around and try not to move the board to the top, otherwise it will come out of line with the board that you've got on the bottom of your sponge cake. Go all the way around, applying a thick layer of ganache. As you do this, you'll start to notice that you get a ring of ganache going just under your board at the top. Okay, what you need to do now is you take your side scraper and you run it round your cake. Clean it off every time. This will give you a nice finish. Your side scraper will be on the edge of your bottom board and the edge of your top board, and this is what will give you the nice straight edge on the edge of your cake, and it will keep it nice and level too. What we need to do now is we need to turn your cake upside down. Nice and simple. And then I'm going to put another layer on the outside of the cake. And again, you go round the edge of your cake, removing the excess that's wider than the edge of your ganache boards. You'll notice that you'll have a few marks on your cake. See if I can bring you in. A little closer. You'll have some marks like this. Don't worry about those. We're going to sort those out in a moment. But for now we're going to pop this back. You can either put it in the fridge or in the freezer. I'm going to put mine in the freezer because it's a lot quicker. So if you pop this in the fridge or the freezer to chill again, and we'll come back and we'll do the final coat. This is the final edge that we're going to apply to your ganache cake. This will clean up any of the small areas where the ganache quite hasn't stayed nice and level. So we're going to pop that on now. Sometimes it's worth warming your ganache up a little bit more, just to make it have a slightly runnier consistency for this last layer. Keep cleaning your blade as you go, it's very, very important. Before we do the final stage of the ganaching, which is to level the top of your cake, which at the moment is currently at the bottom, we need to remove this ganache board. So we're going to take our thin palette knife, dip it into some boiling water and just run it under the rim of your cake. This is one of the questions that I get asked a lot with the ganaching of the cakes. A lot of people ask if you're meant to leave the acrylic board underneath, and what do you do if you're going to be stacking a cake? Well, if you're going to be stacking a cake, you take your silver board, your double thick card, pop it on the bottom, and then you just turn your cake over, ready for putting your icing on, so it's already got your double thick card underneath ready for you to stack a cake. If you're just using this as a single tier cake, which is what I'm going to be doing today, then what you do is you pop your board on top and you turn it over. Now we're going to remove the top board for your cake. So mine is a little loose at the moment, but if you need any help with it, you're doing exactly the same as you did for the bottom. You just dip your palette knife in boiling water and you run a ring around the board until it comes off nicely. There'll be a small ridge on top of the cake, and you'll use your palette knife to level off the ganache on the top of your cake. And just use your scraper one final time to take off any edges that you now have from levelling off the top of your cake. The acrylic boards are for sale in my online shop, which I can put the link in the description for you if you would like to purchase any. This is how you ganache a cake using the acrylic boards and the upside down method. Thank you for watching.